Nebraska versus Michigan State is a game of streaks. The streaks continue. Let's talk.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey gang, it's DP here, Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Greatly appreciate it. For you folks that are everydayers, thank you very much. The ride has gotten more interesting, and so we need to dive in some of the numbers. Before we get into the numbers that indicate who Michigan State and Nebraska really are, Mark Onweiler, if you would please, let them know about Gametime.
Thank you, DP. This episode of Locked On Huskers is brought to you by Gametime. Now, we all know buying tickets can be a nightmare. You never know if you're going to get good seats, if you can get a good deal, if you're paying more than everybody else around you. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Their all-in prices show you your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without any extra hidden fees. And you can buy your tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. All smushed together, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. DP, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Lots to talk about here. Again, I appreciate you making a choice to come and share this content. And spend a little time locked on Huskers. Greatly appreciate it. Your Huskers every day. And happy Halloween. There's no trick or treat when it comes to Nebraska. It's all treat. You can get involved in the tricks if you want, but at 5-3, the Huskers have put themselves in a very interesting place. One, they're invited to the trick or treat party. They're actually invited, and they actually have the hope that they'll receive something good from it. Just for the effort. The two teams and the two programs have some commonalities, but they have some things that are very different currently. And those are the things I want to talk about in this episode, that both teams are on a streak. Both teams have a new coach. Both teams have had to use far more quarterbacks than they thought. And both of them have some issue that's being dealt with, some with good results and some without. We'll talk about the numbers because the numbers allow us to tell factual stories. And then we can get into opinion later in the week as we head towards East Lansing and beat Sparty week here on Locked On Huskers. The first thing in place that Nebraska can't say this much, that they're happy with where they are. They like to be 6-2 and sitting alone on top of the Big Ten West, but being where you are, along with teams that you're going to have to play and possibly defeat anyway, puts them in an interesting position. Now, at 5-3, those 5 wins, you're 1 win from bowl eligible, which, again, I fully expect Scarlet and Cream confetti to be thrown up and down O Street Saturday after the Huskers beat Michigan State. And I'm going to speak in the positive about this because there has to be a change of narrative and change of conversation and change of thinking, especially in my mind, because, again, if we had talked in August about this football team and we said, okay, listen, Jeff Sims will start the season at quarterback. Heinrich Haarberg will take over and win 5 of his first 6 starts. If we said that 3 starting offensive linemen would have to be replaced and that a backup center would be starting at left guard, and then to add that you're 5-3, I'm not sure anybody's really buying. If we said that Gabe Ervin and Anthony Grant are not running backs 1 or 2, that in fact it's Emmett Johnson and you're 5-3. Some eyes would roll if we said that the top 3 receivers in the early part of the season would be out. And that you're going with, ready for this, Malachi Coleman, Alex Bullock, and Jaden Doss, that we would, and that you're still 5-3. Everybody would kind of lean away from the conversation and say, wait a minute, Jaden Doss is the starting slot. What happened? No Marcus Washington, no Billy Kemp, no Jeff Sims, no Gabe Ervin, no Anthony. Really, and that would be that's what's happened, and that the fact that through all of that, Nebraska is still at 5-3. Then I think you can give yourself permission to ponder and wonder what it would be like to beat Michigan State in East Lansing and become bowl eligible with a 6th win, all in the first week of November. The idea that Nebraska is playing meaningful games in late October with a winning record, with the opportunity to go into November and reset the program, the entire branding, imaging, direction, location, elevation of Nebraska football changes with a win at Michigan State. And the beauty of it is Nebraska doesn't have to get too far ahead of itself. It doesn't have to get too far out over its skis to imagine being 6-3. To imagine beating a Michigan State team that, to say it has had its turmoil, is an understatement. To say that it's going through its own wreckage and it's going through its own rebranding, albeit for negative instead of the positive that Nebraska is. Look, this is an interesting week. And the numbers will tell us several things about what's happened this season. We'll go through some of the players, and throughout the course of the week, again, we'll pick offense tomorrow. Then we'll go with defense, and then we'll go into some of the numbers and what they mean against each other and kind of compare that. But the reality is, as we start to identify who's going to play, who the playmakers are, who has been consistent in making plays for both Nebraska and Michigan State, and then to detail why the numbers are what they are, because the numbers often mean what you need for them to mean. And I don't want to do that. I simply want to give you the numbers and let you kind of walk through it mentally with me. And a couple of things in play. Now, again, up front for Nebraska with Prohaska, Evans Jenkins, Ben Scott, Letofsky, Bryce Benhart. Borkature and or Fedoni in some combination, sometimes together, sometimes not. And then Doss, Bullock, and Coleman at the receivers with Lloyd and Ty Hahn behind them. Harburg taking a beating. Took a beating, bloodied up and bruised up and probably, with the brain rattle a bit. And then a healthier Jeff Sims, but not exactly receiving the King's welcome. And then Emmett Johnson and Anthony Grant and Joshua Fleeks as RB3, with Bonner kind of taking over the fullback position when they need to do that. And on the defensive side, the numbers mean what they mean. The names matter. That Ty Robinson sitting at defensive end with Hutmaker and Jamari Butler. Then you add Reimer and Bullock with Sherman, Tommy Hill, Isaac Gifford, Malcolm Hartzog, Phelan Sanford, and Quentin Newsom. Now, the numbers behind that also matter. And that's why I want to talk about the numbers, because the numbers, the depth that they're working with on defense shows up in the numbers. The lack of depth currently, because the depth that's now starting had to move up into the starting fold. And you haven't replaced or refilled or rebuilt the depth behind them. Those are things that Nebraska is going to have to deal with. We'll throw the break when we come back. I want to go through some of the numbers. We'll talk about some of the players, and we'll set it all up. It's Beats Party Week here on Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, DP here, Locked On Huskers. And before we get into the numbers and try to give some value for it, Mark Onweiler, if you would please, let them know about FanDuel.
Thank you, DP. This episode of Locked On Huskers is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. DP, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. And so much of this, and what jumps out to me from the number standpoint about Michigan State and what they've done in this place. Now, they've used 3 quarterbacks. Noah Kim, who won the offseason battle, struggled, got some wins, got player of the week, then got injured and got behind. Then Caden Hauser took over. Similar numbers, similar success, and then he gets injured, and now they're at a third quarterback. That's not exactly ideal, considering you have a new head coach. Now, the interim head coach is Harlan Barnett, who 6 games into this thing has his hands full. He was a defensive coordinator at Florida State. He was a member of the Michigan State staff for 10 years back in the late 2000s into the late teens of 2000, and then went to Florida State. He's also been at Cincinnati and LSU. He actually played at Michigan State back in 1989, 7 seasons in the NFL. And this is his first meeting against the Huskers. Now, Nate Carter is the offensive equivalent of a problem when it comes to Michigan State, because he's consistent and he's got 609 yards rushing at 4.3 a clip, 4 touchdowns along the way. After that, there is a significant drop in production at that position. He's the guy. They'll, especially on downs 1 and 2 in running situation, before they put other people in the game. But Montori Foster and Trey Mosley are actually very good Big Ten receivers. Foster with 29 catches, Mosley with 28 catches, but not many touchdowns. Those touchdowns are few and far between. And then you add in Malik Carr and then Jerron Glover, who gives them some additional work. And he's the long stretch guy, but he has half the catches. So the 2 possession guys move the chain guys, yards after catch guy. That's Foster and Mosley, with Glover as being the, hey, I can kind of break this up and get some yardage after that. The numbers for them, for Michigan State, and I'll compare the offensive numbers just for the sake of this conversation to get some understanding of what we're dealing with. That in rush offense, Nebraska's #1 in rush offense in the Big Ten Conference at 190 yards. Michigan State is 13th at the bottom of the Big Ten Conference, averaging just over 108 yards a carry. Passing offenses, Michigan actually has better numbers, but some of that has been because of being behind competition, etc. But they average 214 yards a game passing. Sounds a lot like Purdue if you want to crash those passing game numbers. For Nebraska, they're 13th in the Big Ten Conference passing. It's easily said that Nebraska fans would like to see, that Nebraska coaches and players, all things Nebraska would like a more efficient, more effective, more productive passing game from Heinrich Haarberg. And now we know who's responsible for it and then how to move forward. And it's a big thing. In total offense, these 2 teams are 9 and 10 in the Big Ten Conference, both averaging 322 yards a game. Nebraska a smidge more at 322.4 versus Michigan State's 322.1. And then scoring offense, Michigan has the lowest scoring offense in the Big Ten Conference at 18 points a game. But don't throw confetti in the air quite just yet, because Nebraska is only averaging 20 points a game. 2 points a game difference. Last year's score was Michigan State 23, Nebraska 20 in overtime. Or 2 seasons ago. 23-20. Both of these stat sheets kind of lean towards that thing. They're good in the kicking game, in that Ryan Eckley averages 44.5 yards a kick. And then having your field goal kicker, Jonathan Kim, go 9 for 12 with a long of 58 yards. Listen, special teams will matter Saturday, just as they did last Saturday against Purdue. They will matter. Kick return game, they have 2 kickers, and there's a name that pops up off the sheet, Alante Brown, who's averaging 17.3 yards a kick. Tyrell Henry is their punt returner with 8 yards a carry. Now, I give you those offensive numbers to let you know that while Nebraska runs the ball better, and they're similar in the passing game, Nebraska's run responsibility is going to be pretty big for them to come out of East Lansing. Michigan State's going to throw numbers and waves at them. But that's okay, because there's a plan for all of it. On the defensive side, Nebraska, of course, with its stellar run defense, is second in the Big Ten Conference, 5th in the country. Nebraska, defensively, against the run, is 5th in the entire nation. I'll let that marinate for a bit, because that's not a thing that we've been able to say and to be comfortable about. Now, here's the thing. Michigan State is 9th in the Big Ten against the run, where if you're the best, the matchup seems to lean in heavily in Nebraska's favor. In the pass defense, neither team's shutting it down and making it overall crazy. Nebraska, of course, is defending it, and they'll put a hat on you. But the number averages are in the same neighborhood. There's a 15-yard difference per game. That's total defense. That's just the pass game. And the total defense, Michigan State has given up 360 yards a game. Nebraska's given up 298. Advantage to the Huskers. On third down, which is a critical number for teams that haven't always had offensive success, being able to extend drives and keep the ball and let your defense rest. Nebraska's slightly better at it. Coach Rule talked about wanting that number above 40%. Well, currently it sits for the season at 38.4. They are 9th in the Big Ten Conference, 81st in the national pool. And that's not good enough for them to do what they want to do. Michigan State is 12th. The numbers don't play, but they're 4th in the Big Ten Conference in third down defense. So they have a method to the madness in being able to get off the field. This is all the stuff that matters when you talk about 5-3 versus 2-6. It's easy to become mentally lazy, but you have to know where the wins are coming from. We'll go a little deeper into those numbers. The numbers matter. We'll do that when we come back to Locked On Huskers. Welcome back, gang. DP Locked On Huskers. Again, your Huskers every day. And as we talk about the numbers, at least on the base level for Nebraska, special teams will play. There's a slight kicking advantage to Michigan State. Michigan State was better in forcing turnovers at 7th in the Big Ten Conference, having turned over 12 turnovers in the course of the season. Now, mind you, Nebraska is 10th with 10. So there's not that much of a gap. But it matters. Here's another number that matters. Michigan State is last in the Big Ten in penalties and penalty yards. Not good for them to create missed opportunities in bad situations. Last in the Big Ten, 120th in the country. 120th in the country 14th in penalty yards at an average of 68 yards a game. Now, mind you, that's a lot. Let's just say for the sake of discussion that's all the penalties, that it's 8 penalties a game at almost 80 yards a game. That's moving the chains for Nebraska. If they aren't settled, if Northwestern they haven't figured out how to settle themselves and just simply play Northwestern football, they're going to create a tough, difficult situation for themselves. That the kicking game should be all about Michigan State, but it's not. It's not. And the personnel on the field and the people who are involved, now that they've become aware, I fully expect Nebraska, Coach O'Brien, to dial up some things and to get some pressure on these kickers, and then pull off and save some blockers and try to get some big runs to change field position for the Huskers. There's a lot in play when you talk about it, and the reality is Nebraska is slightly favored. I think the point spread should be bigger. I'll fight you on that. I think it should be bigger, and I get that talent will tell you one thing, but these numbers of production, these production numbers will tell you the work that's actually been done, and those numbers lean towards the fact that, well, quite frankly, Michigan State is going to get penalized and move the chains for Nebraska. Michigan State wants to make a statement. They're going to go shoulder to shoulder. It's a big deal. Doesn't matter if it's Nebraska. Doesn't matter if it's Iowa. Doesn't matter if it's Wisconsin. Doesn't matter if it's Michigan State. Behind the numbers will tell us a lot. If Michigan State can clean up, they'll do fine. If Nebraska cleans up well, they'll do fine. But if they don't, then the coach has to take over, the fans have to take over, and then make changes. I don't know what to tell people when they ask the question, what does this game look like to you? It looks like a Michigan State-Nebraska game. The first one I saw was a 9-6 snow game. That set the standard for what my expectations were. Don't have any. Don't have any. I expected points that they didn't get them. Listen, we'll put a pin there and then come back tomorrow. And tomorrow's show, we'll talk about the defense and what the two defenses do. The numbers will give us, it will plant seeds for how we're going to go ahead and prepare to watch Michigan State versus Nebraska, and then to know how to scout Michigan State and Nebraska as they go to East Lansing and face one another. The Huskers try to improve to 6-3, while Michigan State tries to improve to 3-6. Interesting times we're in. That'll be it for this episode of Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. We'll close with the 3 words we love so much. Go Big Red.